Hi everyone and welcome back to the Fighter Pilot's Guide to Living. We're picking up with section 2 of Taco's and my interview with Commander Jim Puck Howe, talking about this time picking up from his transition to VF-32. It's so cool to me, you know, fighter pilots are the most ego-swamped people in the planet, and yet there's like a humility too. And this, I loved when you told us the story about Roscoe kind of just beating up on you when you got to 32,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. Talk about
I
that.
so I show up to VF-32. I'm the top stick after having started my first flight with a down. So I'd gone from that to finishing first. I was pretty proud of myself. Thought I was really something. Did really well in ACM. Flew with Casper, like I said, a lot of those flights, and honestly, never really lost a fight. I show up to VF-32, and a pilot training officer is another lieutenant. We fight. Do well on that fight. Do well in all these fights. I'm thinking I'm king shit, and I'm literally like, yeah, I'm never gonna lose a fight. This shit's easy. And then I get Roscoe as my flight lead. We get on deployment, and I have the good fortune, of not. Roscoe is the skipper. Bad Al is our skipper. Roscoe is his driver. They picked me to be his wingman, so it's an honor. But I find out quickly I'm about to learn a lot. Because after you name it, whatever we did, Roscoe is like, prepare to defend yourself. He's a Cajun bull rider from LSU. He was a VF-43 adversary pilot, where a lot of these best pilots were born. And I got my ass kicked for a year. Like, he just savaged the shit out of me. And I realized the first time he kicked my ass, and we're reviewing my tape, and he's looking at my plane, and he's seeing spoilers go up on one side and my tail on the other. He can tell me within 5 knots what my plane is. I mean, he knew about my energy state. He knew how many degrees of, we called it AOA, you guys alpha. So he knew how many units of AOA I was pulling, and I'm like, dear God, I realize now that there's a doctorate to the doctorate. I was probably a MBA level guy at this time, and I now realize that there's the Goodwill Hunting dudes out here, and Roscoe is one of these Goodwill Hunting guys. But it was as humbling as it was. He was a great instructor. He took the time to mentor me, and I learned so much. And I learned not only how to become a much better / great fighter pilot from him, but I learned how to be a better instructor and mentor to the next generation. So I learned how, naval aviation has been the bulwark of the backbone of our defense for years, and it's through people like this. And it was a really exciting part of my journey, was to teach the next generation how to do what he did to me. It's like, I'm going to savage you, and I'm going to teach you how to savage the next generation, so we can keep passing this torch along. And 6 months of getting savaged, 6 months of holding my own, and then I remember the first time I beat him, and Roscoe goes, "My job is complete." And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're still close friends. He's still one of the greatest pilots I've ever known. And I went on and met other guys that were, almost as good as Roscoe throughout my career. And I mean, even, when I was skipper 31 and I had F-14Ds, my CAG at the end was a Hornet baby, Dan Dixon. And Dix was one of the best F-14 pilots. He's certainly the best Hornet baby F-14 pilot I've ever known. And he ended up being a fucking really good F-14 pilot. For a plane that he didn't grow up in, that guy could fly an F-14. And I was like, and I told him, I'm like, Dix, you fly this thing like you're a man, not just a Hornet. And he's like, thank you, Puck. I appreciate that. Not often you tell your boss shit like that, but
he's such a good guy.
Yeah, he is a great guy.
Yeah.
But Roscoe was my first real true. And you talked about you'd interviewed Skid Massey before. He was another one. He was maintenance officer when I showed up to VF-32, and he's just a soft-spoken Southern gentleman. you'd never think for a second that guy was the savage that he was in the plane. But he is, again, another one of the, great pilots. I had Will Cooney, Coondog. He was another great pilot. VF-32 had a lot of really strong 04, 05 leadership, and they really helped me, turn me into the pilot I became later.
So January 94, that's 3 years past Desert Storm. I know like 32 was there for Desert Storm. Did you still have a couple cadre that
we had a couple.
Okay.
They were leaving. I didn't really get to know
pretty
them.
much the cycle, right?
Actually, Casper, Gene Edwards was a swordsman.
Okay.
He was there during Desert Storm. So, but he went there to the RAG. Honestly, most of the guys from that generation didn't have a lot of great things to say about 32. 32 changed right before I got there and became a really good place to be. But there was some oppressive leadership there before I got there. I didn't experience that. I had, I went from Matt Al to Dollar, Kerry Silvers to Kenny Floyd Pink, and they were all great skippers. I had 3 great skippers, so I was very fortunate. But
also,
yeah.
Got it. And how many did you do deployment? How many deployments did you make?
2.
On the 2?
2 with 32.
So what were you guys doing on those? Were they all med cruises?
No, we did both. So we do denied flight over Kosovo. So this is right after, Kosovo's kicked off. This is before Allied force. So we're just enforcing the no-fly zones. Then we do that for a month. Then we went through the Suez and we'd go Southern Watch. So then we'd go down and we were flying the Southern no-fly zone down in Iraq.
Okay.
So we were just drilling circles over the sand down there. But we got to see both AORs. Every now and then the Fox Bats would come down and make things interesting for a heartbeat. But it was, there was nothing real interesting about any of it outside of you're a young guy.
Yeah.
So Roscoe, I remember I'm Roscoe's wingman. First day flight into Southern Watch, and he's with the skipper. We go out, we can't find a tanker. Our tanker went down. We're running out of gas. And Roscoe plugs into a VC-10. So it's a British KC-10, but it only has war pods. So the wing war pods. Mm-hmm. And I watch him plug this thing perfectly, like under control, perfect, gentle, no, 3 or 4 knots of closure. And I didn't understand this at the time, but I watched a sine wave start. Like the take-up reel didn't work. So he's just pushing a rope that isn't going anywhere. He recognizes it instantly. I don't even know what I'm looking at, but he goes idle boards, tries to get out of it. He can't get out of this thing fast enough because the take-up reel never went in. So he's just got 7 feet of hose. So the sine wave goes into the pod and then it comes back out, slaps. It rips about 4 feet of hose. So the basket, 4 feet of hose, and all the wire that's inside the hose is now wrapped around his plane. And I'm watching this with my Rio Nuck, who is Roscoe's roommate. And Nuck goes, well, I guess I'm having a room myself tonight. It's like, Roscoe's not coming back to the boat. And I'm like, and I'm still, this is my first, I'm literally the first JO to fly, feet dry going to Iraq. And I'm like, is this the way it always is? He's like, no. He's like, this is why, as much as you hate the KC-135, he's like, that'll never happen on a 135.
True. Yeah.
It's like, if you screw it up, it's because you screwed it up. He did that thing perfectly. And that, fast forward, KC-135 ended up becoming my favorite tanker because I watched at least 3 take-up reels fail. 2 of the guys got out, 2 of the guys didn't. And, there's nothing you can do. It's like, dear God, perfect plug, and you end up wearing a basket.
It's the only time I've ever seen one break it was a KC-10. So
I'm like, dude, if you're inexperienced, you don't even know what it looks like. You're just like, I didn't know what I was looking at. And they explained, I watched it later because it turns out this was back when the video cameras were huge. And my Rio was actually videotaping this thing. And so we watched it later, and I'm like, so, and that's when Roscoe pointed out, he's like, this is what he's like. I knew the take-up reel wasn't taken in, and I tried to get out, but I couldn't get out fast enough.
Got it.
Like, dear God.
Were you were you guys supporting from the Red Sea, or did you guys go through the Suez all the way around and then support from
We were in
the
the
Gulf?
Persian Gulf. Yeah, we were in
Okay.
the Persian Gulf. So yeah, we
Okay.
went all the way around, and they I thought at the time they were long flights. Fast forward to 2003,
Yeah.
these were anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So these were
Okay.
pretty gentlemanly flights, and honestly, I don't even think we did a night flight. Like those, it was
It's
all day
nice.
flying.
It's nice.
Flip the. I'm doing 9 hour night missions in 2003, but at this point, I was just doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was much easier.
Got it.
Yeah, easier than shit you guys had to do.
Um, so you talk about Roscoe a lot. You got any other idols? Obviously, I mean, sorry, you labeled a whole bunch of people in the swordsman.
Well, I mean,
Anybody else you want to bring up?
Roscoe's really special to me. My Rio then was very special to me. Bill Chubb, Nuck. He was my first lieutenant Rio. Beef Bailey was my first Rio, and he was the OPSO. And I used to joke he had Fisher Price handcuffs for me. He'd take me up on the flight deck and tell me where to sit. Um, well, here's a story. So my first night flight in the fleet, um, it's during a workup. We're already getting ready for deployment. And I'd finished with a buddy of mine from the FRS. We went to VF-32 together. So this is his first flight. So I'm on L3 back there with Beef. We just gotten up. I'm manning up. And I'm not looking forward to this. I mean, this is still when you're a young guy and night traps suck. So I'm like, and this is my first one in the fleet. I want to impress my new squadron, so I don't want to fuck this up. And I'm watching Jeff come down, my buddy come down, and we're up, and I start hearing it, and then I see the wave off lights. My buddy hits the ramp and bounces off the ramp. I'm watching this on L3. His wing goes over my nose in between the bounces. He skags both of his tails and somehow manages to get the plane airborne again. Night one in the fleet. And I'm sitting there, and I'm not smart enough to realize that I'm not ready to go fly. Beef goes, Puck, you okay? Like they limp this bird home to Oceana, and it takes a trap, and the thing ends up getting struck. They're like, it's a strike. We were amazed. He hit both tails. He hit his hook point on the round down, not his hook. Or I'm sorry, the hook attachment point. That's what hit the round down. And that's why they ended up bouncing over. Like, I don't know how the hook didn't grab something, but literally, so the hook ends up detaching there. He smashes both afterburner cans. And because he landed so cocked up, that he hit like basically a 90-degree angle on the round down and bounced over the round down. Otherwise, they're like, as Paddles told me later, like, we've had guys land higher, like further down the ramp, and not make it because it's still a ramp strike. They're like, this is a ramp strike. So I'm sitting there, and my plane, my VDI doesn't work, my main display, and we're like working on it. And I'm like, Beef, I still don't have anything. And he's like, you know what, Puck? I think it's time we just call it a night.
It's probably smart.
And I don't even realize what he's doing because I'm still going like my hands are shaking. I'm nervous as shit, but my VDI isn't working. And he goes, was your VDI really broken? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you weren't. I'm like, no, it was really broken. He's like, oh, I thought you were just being really smart because I wasn't going flying. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that? That's your job. I didn't know I was petrified, but I was still going to go fly. But that was night one in the RAG, or in the fleet. And I'm like, God, is this the way it's really going to be? I'm not sure I want to do this for the rest of my life.
This is hard.
Yeah, this sucks. Yeah, that was unfortunately my friend's last. He tried to stay CQ like 3 months later and couldn't. Like he just, which I get. Like I'm not sure anyone can bounce back from that one.
That's tough. Yeah.
You guys can't hear me, can you?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think I had myself muted on my thing for a while. Okay.
No.
I was going to say Skid missed those night landings, which is like crazy because you guys are talking about this, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
about, when Skid said when he transitioned out. Oh, we haven't released that episode yet, but
No,
anyway,
well, I will tell you, by the time I finished, I
yeah,
missed the night. It takes, you're a senior 03 or an 04 before you start to not fear the night. And by the time I was a senior 04 and an 05, I loved the night. I'm like, it's
yeah,
a day straight in. I got really good. My last three, I had a 4-0 line period for the entire cruise at night. Like, you give me especially in the D, we had, we had what was called a Mode 2 Delta, where first off, we had the best HUD in the world. Then we had this little box that you just put the velocity vector in. And literally, it was like a video game. And between that and DLC, you didn't even have to touch a throttle. Like, I don't understand how guys struggled in F-14D. The D was just a magic machine. And yes, the straight in, I'm like, and Skid used to say that. It's like a day straight in. And I'm like, well, that's great when my hands are shaking and my knees are shaking. But, once I got 100 night traps in VF-32. And by the time you get to about 150, 200, you're good. And, my last 100 or so were, you're like Skid said. And he used to say that, but I'm like, well, Skid, you're arguably one of the top 5 ball fly. To this day, Skid's one of the top 5 ball flyers in the Tomcat I ever knew. Roscoe was another one, by the way. But, yeah, it was the night. It's a straight in. Now, some nights are worse than others, and there's some things, but at the end of the day, you just get into a routine, and it's muscle memory.
Yeah. It's funny how it's a little different on my perspective, because when I first get in the fleet, it's easy because I'm flying with the senior dudes.
Right.
And then as it changes, and now you get to like department head, senior JO, and it becomes now I'm flying with the junior dudes. And it's like,
now it's just like, hey, hey, turn on your autopilot, whatever the shit.
I mean, it's still hard, but it's Gucci.
No,
I will say too, it's like the night.
Don't even.
The night is when you become the night carrier. It's amazing how you just get acclimated, and the scary part then becomes case one, because it's like we haven't done this in like 4 months. We're gonna kill somebody.
Taco, I used to tell my guys, you cannot have the only place you can have an emergency. You cannot have an emergency at the field. And the only place there's such thing as an emergency in an F-14 is night carrier operations. I go, you can't, I don't care what it is. It's not an emergency in the day at the boat. And there's no such thing as emergency at the field. I'm like, it's a field. Figure it out, guys. I don't care if you're on fire. Just get your shit together and unscrew yourself. The only time I'm going to give you a little leeway was in its night at the boat. Then I'm like, all right, now I get it. We have some issues. I'll work with you, but day boat, day field, or night field, nothing. Night carrier, all right, I'll work with you. But outside of that, there's no such thing as an emergency.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, after 32, is that when Snort picked you to go to Top Gun? Okay,
Yeah.
So was Snort at VF-32 with you then?
No, Snort was a Commodore.
Okay.
Snort was our air wing. I guess we'd gone from. No, I think we were still Fighter Wing 1. I'm not sure if we were Fighter Wing 1 still, or it was Fit Wing Land. Like what it it was one of the two. Like that's when Fighter Wing 2 was out in Miramar. And so they may have already shut down Fighter Wing 2. And once they shut down Fighter Wing 2, we became Fit Wing Land. But when I was stashed there, it was Fighter Wing 1. But Snort was Fighter Wing 1, Fit Wing Land, whatever the hell it was. I could check my orders because he wrote my orders to Top Gun. So yeah.
Well, how did it feel that Snort picked you? Was that like a cool?
I felt privileged knowing Snort. And the cool thing, like I think shared with you, is that part of his ascension process, he was like, I'm going to fight every one of you before you go to Top Gun. So he picked 3 pilots, and we're all going to meet Snort out in the whiskey area and fight down to the deck. And I was really excited because I was like, I'd always wanted a piece of Snort because I'd heard that he was the guy you had to fight. And Roscoe was preparing me for it. So Roscoe's like, Puck, I'll get you ready for it. We practiced a lot of fights. He's like, Snort's a cheater. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and I learned all the cheating. It's like, ox flaps, circuit breakers, flaps down. I can tell you LE1, LE2. I can tell you all the wing sweep, circuit breakers, all the shit you had to pull for what they called it Zone 6. So you turned off your ECS system. I mean, the plane was overheating, and Roscoe's teaching me all this stuff, and I was amazed at how many lights are on. So you get all sorts of warnings, and I'm like, I guess it makes sense because you've turned off like half the shit in the plane. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, you don't have a CADC. He's telling me, I'm like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. You don't have this, you don't have that. He's like, okay. So, once you get over the first couple times of fighting like that, you realize this plane in the right hands is a beast. I mean, it fights a flat scissor really well. And that was our best fight certainly against the Viper, the F-16, but even against the Hornet, because you can tree a Viper, as we like to say. They get stuck on their limiter. They're really limited, but even the Hornet could not fight a flat scissors very well. When I say it would fly, it goes faster. It can't go as slow as we can. You could, if you had a straight F-14, it wasn't too bent, you could fly that thing at 80 or 90 knots. Yeah. So you're basically just standing there and you're just rudder walking it. And eventually in a flat scissors, it's the guy who's going faster is going to lose because he's flying to the wall first. And you're eventually going to flush the Hornet out. The trick was to get that to that point, because that's not the Hornet's best fight. So he doesn't want to do that. So, but doing it with another Tomcat is a challenge, because now I'm fighting Snort, who's probably the king of this tactic. And Roscoe's like, this is what he's going to do. And he's going to try to tree you. And I'm like, all right. And he's like, but you got it. He's like, dude, Snort will try to fly into you. You have to fly into him too. And I'm like, all right.
Oh my God.
But unfortunately, our fight never happened. We ended up in a situation when I got back from deployment. Snort was like, I can't do this because, apparently the lawyers got involved, but also the F-14 readiness was low. Not that that's a huge shock, but so they couldn't supply the planes for this mythical fight for the three guys that he picked to go to Top Gun. So we just ended up going anyway. But he talked to all of us, which was nice. We had a nice meeting with him, and he's like, guys, you represent the F-14 and everything. And I will always be, I'm flattered / honored that I was a Snort selection. Just knowing his legacy and his importance to the Tomcat community. Unfortunately, the selection process switched very quickly after that, because I was one of the first classes of strike fighter tactics instructors. So we'd gone from the power projection class to the longer. My class, we still had night week when I went through Top Gun, which they got rid of. I think my class was probably the reason we got rid of it. But it was 3 months long when I went through Top Gun, and I mean, it was a great class. But when probably 3 classes later, by 3 classes later, they'd switched the selection process, so the Commodores no longer picked who was going to class, and the Commodores did it off of squadron recommendations. It was, squadrons forwarded their guys, and like, these are the guys I want, so you're just putting aboard, and then the guys in the readiness office at the fighter wing would pick.
And this was after 32, so we're back.
After 32. On my way to, okay. I was one of the last guys. So I went from 32 to VF-101, and I went from VF-101 to Top Gun like a month later. My class started in June. And the thing is, they tried to change my orders, because this is right. We just started. We stood up the Strike Fighter Wing Tactics School, or SWATSLANT.
Yeah.
And they tried to make me go to SWATSLANT. And I was like, I wanted to go to VF-101 because I shared with you before that I was quitting. I was only going to Top Gun so I could go to find an F-16 unit that wanted a Top Gun guy.
That's right. Yeah.
Which was going to be easy. I was over the Navy at this point. And so I talked to my skipper, and he's like, Puck, I'll unscrew this. And he did. Like a week later, like, no, you're going to go to VF-101. You're still going to Top Gun. You're going to 101. You'll be the SFTI there. So that worked out. Yeah, the process for going to Top Gun changed after a couple classes after mine.
Did you know your Rio then? Because I mean, previous to that, you'd go with somebody from 32.
I had met Randy. I went through with Randy Stearns. His call sign was Abdul. When I knew him, his call sign was Howard, because that was when Howard Stearns was still a big radio, But he'd come from He was a ROTC guy, just come from Pensacola. It was in a rag. So I'd met him a couple years earlier in passing. You know, friends of friends knew each other. I could have recognized him, but I didn't know him.
Hmm.
And our orders paired us. Like there wasn't any mystery of who we were going with. So Randy and I, we started to meet each other, like, to get to know each other. And VF-101 did a great job of preparing us as a crew.
Okay.
Pac McMasters was our OPSO, and he was an old Top Gun bro, fighter, F-14 instructor out there. And he's like, I'll get you guys ready. So we had 3 or 4 flights with him where we briefed 1v1s, and he's like, this is what Top Gun's going to do to you out there. So we got to work. Randy and I got to fly together, kind of get to know each other, and it was different because he was a 142 guy. They shut down 142, the Ghost Riders. He went to 143. He'd done two deployments, and both of those are really good squadrons. So he was a really seasoned two crews, 2 workups, Rio, knew his shit. I was fortunate. I got two workups, 2 deployments, so we both, had a lot of experience. The other guys in the class did not have nearly as much experience as we did. As a matter of fact, one of the crews that went through was a VFA2 or VF-201 crew. So they were a reserve this was one of the first times they tried that experiment, and that did not go well. That was the first and last time. One of those guys didn't graduate. I won't share who, but one guy graduated, the other guy didn't. I don't know how that happens, but yeah.
Who did you fly with after that?
He went through the class. He just didn't graduate. They didn't realize he didn't graduate until graduation day. His envelope had no patch in it. It's like,
oh,
yeah.
Oh,
But Randy, I ended up being really lucky. I mean, Randy is one of the best Rios I've ever flown with, and one of the things that I'm sure you appreciate, Taco, is a guy in the back. That you realize how hard your reputation rests on what you have between your legs. That doesn't sound good, but
Just gonna sit back and listen.
That's like, I'm just gonna let him go with this.
I'm intrigued.
If your machine there, if the system's working, it can be a little easier. But what I judge a guy on is how well he does when the AUG-9 wasn't working, which was frequently. I mean, we had a lot of modes. Very rarely were all of them working. Like a pristine AUG-9 was fantastic, but when the system started to not work, a good Rio could make something work. And Randy is a genius at making something work. Even to the point, by the end of class, the instructors knew, like, we'd be -2 on a hop, and Top Gun is demoing the lead, and their radar isn't working, at least not well. They'd press the lead to us. Like, they wouldn't even, normally they'd try to fight through it, like, hey, we're supposed to demo this. They're like, hey, we're pressing. Like, pre-push. They're like, screw it. And I'm like, all right, we got the lead. Get on board, bitches. Randy would make shit work. And I was very, very fortunate that because outside of 1v1, I mean, we had a great time in 1v1. We did very well in 1v1. The rest of the class is entirely Rio dependent. I mean, it's important to be a good driver, but if you don't have a good Rio for Top Gun, I can't even imagine trying to get through that course. I mean, that's a long 3 months.
Yeah,
you
sure.
get 3 weeks of 1v1s, but after that, it's 2.5 months of Rio's intensive shit. And Randy was probably better than 3/4 of the Top Gun instructors. That's how good he was. Yeah.
So you brought up night week. What type of missions were you flying in night week?
We did all of them. So we did DCA, to use, I don't know what they're calling it now, DCA, OCA. We did I'll never forget, we were leading night 1, Randy and I. So we're leads, we're leading a division. And this is, this goes back to the 201 crew. They never fly at night. Now, we flew a lot at night. I was a goggle instructor. So I'm just pissed that we can't fly with goggles. because not everyone's goggle qualified. And I'm like, I don't care. I am.
I am.
I want to put my goggles. I don't care what these morons are doing. And they're like, no, we can't get goggles for everybody. So I'm like, oh, great. So we got a couple stupid people, so we all have to be stupid. So we're leading, and we're just capping. And I'm like, okay, it looks good. We're a wall, it's a 4-ship. And I'm like, I'm looking out, keeping track of everybody, and we push, and we are at a perfect wall. And I'm like, God, I go, Abdul, like, this shit might work. Like I'm like, this is gonna be a goat rope. We're gonna be fucked. Like, we're gonna lose somebody. And this is when I realized that we were just totally screwed. The 201 guys were my -3, so they were the section lead of my other section. He calls blind, and I'm like literally, tapes on, fights on, push, and I'm like, perfect wall. I'm like, couldn't work out better. I'm like, and he goes blind, and I'm like, I go, dude, literally on the tape, you see, I go, you're right 3 o'clock for a mile, blind for like 3 minutes. I'm like, how the fuck do we end up pushing in a perfect combat spread if you don't even see me? I'm like, I realized then that we were just in formation was dumb luck. Like, it took us 5 minutes of comm trying to get the team like, oh, visual. I'm like, oh, meanwhile we're on, we've got like 3 missiles in the air. I mean, like, and I'm like, all right, I'm never doing this again. And they listened to the tapes afterwards, and they're like, were you really blind? And he goes like, yeah, I couldn't see him. Like, could you see your wingman? He's like, no, not really. The Top Gun instructor's like, so you didn't see anybody?
It was dark.
Yeah. And I think that went a long way to putting a fork in knife week, or night week. So we were the last class to do night week. I liked it, it was fun. It would be something, if you were to do it, if you had sensors and goggles and things that we would actually fight like. I'm like, I'm never going into battle without goggles. Why are we even here?
Absolutely.
This is silly.
Were you guys doing air to surface?
Because like Skid was like, ooh, goggles, he wasn't. It depends on where you were, in that whole.
Like I was the first goggle instructor in VF-32. Me and Marco Garrison. We just gone to WTI at MAWTS. We came back and they're like, we were fat gays. I'm like, you're going to be our first goggle guys, which I thought was really cool until I started doing it. And I'm like, I flew at night for like 3 years. That's all I did because I had to teach everybody else. And it was a curse that followed me through my career. I was a goggle instructor everywhere I went. So I'm literally, in VF2 as a department head, and guys are like, hey, can we goggle up? I'm like, no. I'm not goggling tonight. We're the airborne respot. I'm like, we're gonna be airborne for 10 minutes, kid.
You brought up MAWTS. So you went to MAWTS when you were 32 before Top Gun.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, and then maybe this is a good segue to an off ramp after this, because Beth, you got to go to bed.
For like telling the entire world that I'm.
Oh, we
that I turned into a pumpkin at 10:30.
Yeah, that's got a bedtime.
Can I? Oh no, I love this. We can cut that. Hold on, wait. Taco's just cutting it. Oh, you're so cute.
Yeah,
okay,
the
I'm not
royal
cutting
weed.
This is real. This is real time, y'all. Yes, I do turn into a pumpkin at like 10:30 at night.
So do I.
I'm
just blaming you.
Bourbon with my name on it downstairs. So.
You have a what with your name?
Bourbon with my name on it downstairs.
Of course. Wait, what have you been drinking?
Bourbon.
Oh, it looked yellow.
Well,
Skull. Brown.
Just bourbon. I mean, it's bourbon.
I mean, okay. I'll take it. I believe it.
So can you talk a little bit about the difference between MAWTS and Top Gun since you've seen both?
Yeah. When I went through MAWTS was 95, and only the F-14s were going through it. And we adopted it early. And it's really, WTI program is really what our SFTI program is based on. Before SFTI, squadrons were in charge of all the qualifications. So before, we call it level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, if you're going to be a, instructor. I assume that terminology hasn't changed. But
close,
it was, you were a tactical wingman, it was a wingman, tactical wingman, section lead, division lead. That was the precursor to level 1s through whatever. We actually just use those terms. And it was squadron dependent. So some squadrons were really strong and had great programs, really robust programs, and yet there was a lot to get through to become any of those. There are other squadrons that were just fucked up as hockey bats, and you could be a division lead and you were still a moron. So there was a lot of disparity along the fight line depending on what the leadership in the squadron was, and it fluctuated. Like good guys would come out like, "Hey, we're going to rework this," and that guy is not a section lead anymore. He needs to prove that he can do it for me and whatever. I mean, that was actually pretty standard. There were skippers that would roll in and pull section leads, division leads. Like, yeah, you're not a division lead anymore. You got to prove it to me. I'm like, all right, yeah, it was not, So I go to WTI, and my eyes are kind of open because I now realize the Marines have this very standardized program. They have an outside body come in, weapons school instructors that are not in a squadron. They're at the weapons school. They're at MAWTS, and they come to wherever, and so they're all in Yuma, and they'll fly out to Cherry Point for the Harriers. They'll come out to Buford for the Hornets, and they will, El Toro. This is back when El Toro was still their base, and they will, as an outside agency, grade baby wingmen, baby section leads, baby division leads, and they're the ones that have the final say on whether or not you're going to be that. And they were significantly more standardized, and I would honestly say that their bar was higher than ours at the time. Like, their program made you be better than our general. I mean, we had squadrons that probably had guys that were better than theirs because they had really good leadership, but I would say the average, their average was higher than our average along the flight line. They were really locked on. So that was my introduction to that program, and I had to learn a lot. And it's a total warfare school. Like, I was going through with KC-130 tankers. I was going through with Marine Prowlers. I was going through with Cobras. I mean, we had, you name a helicopter, we had it. We had Avenger, we had the little surface-to-air Avengers, the whole thing. So it was a warfare class, and I learned a lot about how they fight wars as well. It was a doctorate on all of that. Like, I wasn't a division lead. I'd never bombed at night, and I'd never tanked off a KC-130. And my first flight at MAWTS, I'm leading a division to go tank off a 130 to go drop bombs at night. I'd never done any of it. So, welcome to the fight. And I'm watching, and the 130 sucks to tank off of. It flies at 5 knots. It's going backwards. And on a rough night, the Bassett's going up and down. Yeah. You've got to put the wings back just a little on a Tomcat because we can't go side to side. And so the plane's just waffling. You're raked up. You're trying to tank off this plane that's probably doing 180 knots. I mean, it's just like you're rudder walking this thing. It's slow as shit. So that's, my night started leading the division to that, then going to bomb at night. And I'm like, Beaker, I've never done any of this. Like, well, that makes 2 of us. So I'm like, all right, trial by fire. We figured it out. We did actually really well. And I learned a shitload. So that was my first doctorate level. And Roscoe, again, had tried to, prepared me. The fighting part was easy. It was the warfare shit that I had to get my arms around, and leading divisions and stuff. Because that was the first time that I'd led a couple divisions, but I hadn't had a significant experience doing it. And now I'm leading divisions every day. And, there are 12 Hornet guys. There's 3 other Tomcat crews going through. But they're both flying. The other Tomcat crews are flying Ds. So I'm the only A guy out there. Now, I will say my squadron supported me with 2 planes. So I had 2 planes for myself, and they were great A's. Nice. So I was very blessed, and they just had to send maintenance out. So I had 2 planes, a maintenance crew, and a really good reel. So that made the course a little easier. But learned a lot. And I also realized the Marines had a really good idea. And I come back from that, and that was when the beginning of the SFTI program was being created. It was getting floated. My friends were talking about it. And I'm like, I think it's a great idea. And honestly, I do think that we just went to MAWTS, grabbed their WTI handbook, and said, this is what they do. Take out Marine, put in Navy, and I hope we plagiarized the shit out of it because it was a really good program. It is a really good program. And that's basically what our SFTI, our situation became based off of. So fast forward, I'm going to Top Gun. I'm one of the first 4 SFTI classes. We'd switch from PowerPoint or power projection to PowerPoint, power projection to the strike fighter tactics instructor. And I'm like, and I had a Marine in my class. He's like, "You're a WTI already?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh man." He's like, "I'm just going to go to you for all the answers." I'm like, "Well, I wouldn't." I didn't know what I was doing back then, but it was a lot easier for me. Top Gun was significantly easier for me having gone through MAWTS. And a lot of the guys that went through MAWTS for the Marines had been to Top Gun. Mm-hmm. That was typically a prereq to go to MAWTS, was that you had been to Top Gun. So of the 12 guys, 7 had already been to Top Gun.
Got it. And did you get your FAC-A at MAWTS, or were you a FAC-A before?
I was already a FAC-A.
When did the FAC-A program start for the F-14? Was that around that time, or was it going...
You know, it was early. I was one of the early guys there too. It went kind of hand in hand with the Brian Brew and some of the other guys from VF-31 had started it. I'm trying to think when I have to look at my records when I actually was qualled. Mm-hmm. The great thing about the way that we do it, instead of, well, even Marines, and I didn't know this until I went through MAWTS. To be a Navy FAC-A, we had to go to either AGOS, which is the Air Ground Operations School for the Air Force, which is our second choice. Our primary choice is going through the TAC-P course for the Marines. So the Tactical Air Control Party, which I went through down at Camp Lejeune. And so you learn how to be a ground FAC. I have a ground FAC qual. In order to be a Navy FAC-A, you have to be a Marine qualified ground FAC. And for all the services, the U.S. Marine Corps is the controlling agency for that, which makes sense. It affects them more than anybody. So, and they're the experts. So I had to go to their burning bush and learn how to be a FAC before I became a FAC-A. The Marines don't need to do that. And I didn't know this. A Marine FAC-A does not have to go to TAC-P. It is an in-squadron qual. So you can literally, now, granted, they know a lot of that stuff because they've gone through TBS. They're Marines. It means something to them. It's a lot of words to us. But I do think that our program was better than theirs because I would have made, if I was a Marine guy, I would have absolutely made sure my guy had gone to TAC-P first. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let you be a FAC in a plane without being a FAC on the ground. Yeah. I think that's the foundation of the program. You need to understand it. And if you don't understand it from their point of view, trying to understand it from our sky view doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah. It helped me a lot when I was in the air, knowing what I was trying to reinforce on the ground, having been down there going, oh yeah, you know, so that's when I learned. And actually it was the Marine OPSO at MAWTS is the one that, so there were a lot of Marine guys down there like, I can't believe these guys are FAC-As, you know, whatever. And he got up and he's like, I'm over this. He's like, these guys have been to TAC-P. How many people in this room have been to TAC-P? Like 2 guys from the Cobras raised their hands out of this class of 150 dudes. It was an auditorium full. He's like, so there's 4 guys that have been to TAC-P here and 2 of them are wearing Navy uniforms. And the major goes, so you guys can all shut the fuck up. And I'm like, wow, I don't have to say anything else. And they're like, we didn't know that. I'm like, that's the way we do it. Pretty sure you should probably do it the same way.
Yeah, I wonder if that's changed because I know there was a lot of, when I went through TAC-P, there was quite a few F-18 guys, obviously Cobra, and that's, I wonder if it, you know,
they may have.
After a while, they're like, hey, maybe this just makes sense. Why not? Because you're so right. I mean, having both perspectives, if you're trying to do talk-ons or whatnot,
any of it,
having thought about it on the ground and then in the air makes sense.
I wouldn't want to do the job without having gone through TAC-P.
Yeah,
having
I agree.
Controlled in all sorts of places, in all sorts of worlds. I always went back to my roots in Lejeune on OP-10. And it's like, all right, I get it. And, you know, the Marines do a great job. I mean, did you do the puff board? Did they have a puff? You probably had like a computer simulator.
There was a computer simulator.
Yeah. Back in the day,
and
Taco, you'll love this. It was a puff board. So it was like this big, you know, like a Christmas village with trains and all this shit. But it was like the size of a room, right? And they had, on one side, you had a window, and you'd look through the window, and you literally, it was all, and you would call your fire from this window. You like, okay. And
Did not
a
do
little puff would come up through the bottom. Like, so you'd know how accurate you were. And then you'd adjust off of that. In
that.
this,
Wow.
yeah, in this little Lego world room. I had a blast. I was like, can we go back to the puff board? Yeah. Like, it was so much fun. I'm like, this
Oh,
is so
yes.
cool.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No, we did not have that.
Yeah, I know. You had computers and real shit. I'm sorry. The puff board, you would have loved it. It was like, yeah.
Amazing.
And little choo-choo
Oh.
trains, all sorts of shit. Yeah, I'm
Oh
a
my
child.
God. Uh, yeah, I think you brought up a good point though. So if you go to MAWTS is your introduction, and then you go to Top Gun.
Yeah.
That whole warfare fighting, I mean, is stripped down because all you're worrying about then in Top Gun is the division. Like I just have
That's
to
it.
worry about the four
Yeah.
piece. So it was probably it was easier because you're like, wow, I'm
It
so
was a
used
lot
to
easier.
having
Yeah,
five
it was
planes that
much
were
more
spinning.
focused on. I look at Top Gun. It was a finishing school. I like, you learn how to really brief. You learn how to debrief. You learn how to hold a standard. But I mean, I learned more about warfare going through WTI than I did going through SFTI.
Yeah.
But that's the goal of WTI. I mean, that's the reason you go through the class. Like when you're just determining your tanking plan, you literally walk next door to the 130 group and you're like, guys, where should we tank? And they're
Yeah.
like, okay. It's more like an Air Wing Fallon than it is,
Yeah.
Whereas Top Gun, it's like, okay, what do you have tomorrow? Once you finish the 1v1 syllabus, you're like, okay, what are we going to do now? It's 2v1. We do that a couple times. We do 1v2. We do that a couple times. Then it's section hops, different flavors, self-escort strike, graduate to fours, 4Vs, 4v2s, 4s, Xs, whatever, baby war, and then, your grad hop. And, that's it. But it is all self-contained. There wasn't anything at MAWTS didn't involve anything less than like 40 planes. Like the whole thing was LFE. So you're all like, all right, get it on.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot. And and the area, I mean, the Copper Mountains are like 3 miles past Yuma. So you are literally, you got to get your fence checks done like with that. It's like going to Whiskey 174.
Yeah.
You're down at Key West. You're like 2 minutes in. You're in the area. You're fighting.
You're ready. Yeah.
And that's the way it was at MAWTS. You're in the area. And we had great adversaries. We had the Marines that were there. They'd bring in guys from Miramar back when Miramar was still a Navy base. So you always had great support out there. They even brought the Luke guys. So they'd bring Air Force guys up sometimes to be guest guys. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that being exposed to that is so important as well, right? Because if you just go to Top Gun and then, which I think they're both important, right? Because I think the bennies of Top Gun, like you said, is a finishing school. I know that I can put anybody who finished Top Gun in a lane and I can trust that their employment is going to be sound and they're going to hold that lane.
Yep.
But to then, open the aperture up and just see how everything happens around that lane is also super important. Because then, you have to have both in order to be good at fighting a war.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, no, it was, and I appreciated the opportunity. Like I said, it was, I was a young guy. They had to give me I had to get an FCF qual before I went out. I wasn't FCF qualled yet. They're like, you've got to be FCF qualled so you can, in case we have to fix the plane. I had just become a division lead, but I hadn't led a division yet, like I said. So, I mean, I was an infant in all of this shit. I'd been in the squadron a year and a half when I went to MAWTS.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild to think that.
So I was like, all right, you're going.
That's awesome.
Super, super cool.
It was fun. Good times.
Sounds like it. It's making me wish I had.
Do we have guys going through WTI anymore? Do you know?
I know some, but not like, it sounds like you guys were going all the time. It's onesie, twosies that I know that are dual patch.
I would say, let's see, there were 4 classes a year at WTI. At least there were when I was, young. And we had Tomcats going through every class, at least 1 or 2. The problem was we had to supplement, like the big, the squadron had to provide 2 jets. So that was the requirement to go, is your squadron had to be willing to pony up 2 planes per student. which I don't think any squadron could do now.
That's a lot, yeah.
And they used a Navy augment crew, so we had to have an F-14 instructor crew. So the Oceana Weapons School would provide the MAWTS instructor crew. So we had Tomcat guys. So there were, in my world, we had 3 crews and our instructor crew. So we had a division of Tomcats. But yeah, it was the instructor. I said the other guys were D's. The instructor was also a B guy. So he would fly my other plane.
Okay.
But the other 2 students were both D guys. So they had
That's
Gucci stuff. Bastards.